And we see this with men. You ask them, who are you? The first thing they do is, oh, I'm the vice president of XYZ company, or I have this or I have that. And people, they look for outside things to show them who they are, rather than knowing who they are and allowing that to pour into everything that they do.
Welcome to the Superhuman Mindset Podcast. My name is Felix Asari, and on this episode, I am honored to have a brother. Guys, when I tell you this guy is jacked, I mean he is jacked. He is a father. He's the founder of the Bong and BAIN DIY shop. All my DIYers, check this out, definitely. Him and his wife are the founders of the Big BAIN Theory podcast. He's a lover of Christ, and one of his missions is to help people live the best versions of themselves from mental, physical, spiritual, and an emotional perspective. And today, I'm excited to have you here, TJ BAIN. Welcome to the Superhuman Mindset Podcast.
Oh, thank you, my brother. You have no idea. It is such an honor. Man, we've had these conversations outside of a podcast, and it's so dope to be able to jump into it and have it with you here. And my prayer that I hold is just that, we can help touch the lives and hearts of all who listen. That's really it. You nailed it. My purpose and mission in life is to help everybody live at the highest level possible for them and to continue to reach for more, right?
Absolutely. So let me just jump right into this. Wait a minute. So on your honeymoon, your wife tried to give you your ring back? You didn't see that coming.
I did
How
not.
does that happen?
I did not. Well, so what's interesting, and I'll try to make it quick. We went through a lot of stress leading up to our wedding. We're talking about two different people from different cultures, different backgrounds even. And so there was a lot going on at that time. And really what it boiled down to that we didn't know in the moment was that birth control really messed her up, man. She was not the same person she was prior to getting on it. She'd gotten on birth control just before that. But yeah, I mean, it was a rough go. We got out there and she just was angry, frustrated. And I'm thinking, this is supposed to be our honeymoon. We're supposed to be having a great time. And yeah, the funny thing is we didn't know that, right? So we didn't know the birth control affects you that way. We continued to work together and obviously had a great marriage. But as soon as we figured out, so this was like a year or so later, like a year and a half later, as soon as we figured out it was the birth control that was causing her to be a little not herself, let's say, we were driving and we're like, all right, time to get rid of this birth control and we'll just let whatever happens come. 2 weeks later, we were pregnant with my first. So,
oh boy.
It worked out.
Oh boy. Wow. So you talked about to have that. Is there anything like a perfect marriage?
No, I don't think so. And let me preface that by saying I'm only 20 years in, right? So I don't know. We've been
Only
through
20 years in.
Yeah. And it's been great, right? We've had our challenges, but I don't think there is a perfect marriage because I don't think anyone is perfect. I think we are people striving for perfection. And I think we can have moments of perfection within a marriage. But man, you're two different people trying to work your way through life. Then you bring kids into the mix and everything else, business, etc. And, I think people can get this idea in their mind that things need to be perfect and they have this false conception of what that must look like. And then if they perceive that their marriage isn't that, they think, oh, I'm failing. Oh, there must be something I'm doing wrong. Maybe I married the wrong person. Like marriage is a challenge, but if you're both committed to the same goals, you both love each other and you're both working on becoming the best versions of yourself, you can get very close to perfection in a marriage, I think. Very close, but it's an ongoing pursuit.
You just called 20 years only. Why does it look to me that it seems like it's only 3 years for you? What did you discover, my man?
Oh man, you're not kidding. You've got some good questions. This is beautiful. So, what it was that we discovered, and it's a lot of things, it's hard to wrap it up into one thing. But
Feel
years
free.
ago, we decided that what we committed ourselves to is to love one another, period.
Mm,
And man, I'm not the different man, the same man that I was last year. I'm not the same man I was 5 years ago, Terrence. And I'm definitely not the same man I was when we got married. So she's loved all these different versions of me. And I've loved all these different versions of her. And we committed ourselves to loving each other the best we can, showing up for each other, and to creating a life of joy, right?
mm,
And I've told her, this may sound crazy. I've told this to people and gotten mixed reviews, but I still remind her all the time, honey, I'm committed to loving you with all my heart, my mind, and strength. I'm committed to supporting you and to bringing you joy. But if the time ever comes that I'm not able to do that, and you feel like you need to get away, or there's someone else out there for you, the door is open. Like, she's not forced to stay with me. She stays with me because she loves me, and I'm with her because I love her. And I think that's important, because I know a lot of marriages where people are married but they're not in love. They're not committed to joy, and they're just getting by, and there's nothing. I'm not casting judgment on that, but what I'm saying is there's so
mm.
much more out there. And so that's what's kept it, man. We're in love. We date. We still do the things that we did when we were dating, to keep the spark and remember that that's what we are first. We're lovers, right? So I don't know if that speaks to your question.
Yeah, it does. So essentially, what I'm hearing from your perspective is you, number one, gave the commitment. However, you still left the door open. And that in between still keeps the relationship going and the relationship thriving.
Yeah, and let me clarify. When I say door open, it's not like the crazy open marriage. It's nothing like that. What it is saying that our connection is based upon love, and I want to see you as happy and as successful and joyous as you can be. And if it ever comes to the point that I can't do that for you, right? I don't want her to feel like she's trapped into this, if that makes sense. There's a sales technique. They call it like the takeaway clause almost. It's allowing the person to know they've got a way out, and it's there's free will in this relationship. And I think that that's it. Like when both partners know there's that commitment, but then there's also that saying of, look, if I can't do that for you and you feel like there's someone else out there, I can love you enough to let you go and experience that and find that out, and still hold that place of love for you, because that's my commitment, right? And sometimes love means allowing someone to go, right? Fortunately, that hasn't happened, and I don't think it will in our case, but I think it's a powerful thing, and I think if people really realize and committed themselves to love rather than, well, that's my wife and that's my husband, we're forced to be together. I think that's a little subtle thing though that can make a big difference.
Wow. So, and I asked this question because I see you and your wife do a whole lot together, man. From your podcast to your DIY projects, you were in sales for Twilio. Did I get that right?
So that was the last, yeah. So I spent 13 years in technology sales, working for
Wow.
various different corporations, selling into the big Fortune 500 companies, etc.
Wow. And then you decided, and that whole decision I want us to dig into there, but I want us to talk about this first. So you decided to come and do this with your wife. Boy, that must be lovely. How did you make that transition? How did you get there?
So that is a long story that I will try to tell quickly, but I think it's an important one. My wife's always been very entrepreneurial, right? And we went through a very tough time. We had just moved back from Austin, Texas to Utah.
Mm,
This was right in the summer of COVID. And that move was a lot more difficult than we thought it would be. There was some businesses that she had worked on that COVID really affected it. They didn't go
mm.
well. And she fell into a pretty deep depression at one point in time. We were in between moves. There's just a lot of stress that comes with moving to begin with,
Oh,
right?
oh yeah.
And real talk here, dude. She went through a really rough time, and I thought for a minute I was going to lose her. To be honest with you,
Mm.
it was kind of, we all go through those stages in life, but we had this moment one night. We were staying at my parents' house while we are in between moves, and we had this conversation, and it was, to put into scriptural terms, it was almost like a whole death and rebirth process that she went through when we were
Wow.
talking about this. And I'm just sitting there watching her as she's just, she's going through a process. She's crying. She's just, she even said, man, I wish I could just disappear from the earth. I wish I could be blotted out of existence. Like, it was heavy, bro. And that's, 16 plus years into our marriage, right?
Wow.
And what was really fascinating with that moment is, as I sat there in silence and listened to her and listened to Spirit on what to do next, I realized I was like, the best thing that I can do for her is hold the vision of her highest potential, right?
Mm.
And so we went through this process together. I kissed her on the forehead, laid her down on the bed. I went into my prayer room and I started praying, bro. And in this prayer, I started giving gratitude, and I started to visualize and see her living this highly joyful, like, success filled life. I started seeing her back in her creative power, right? And as crazy as it sounds, what I started to do every single day in my prayer and meditation, I would visualize her happy and ecstatic and loving what she was doing in life. And I would even visualize her coming into my office and being like, yo, you'll never guess what just happened. And me being like, holy cow, that's so dope, right? Every day I was doing this, right? That was before Wild Hearts Home ever existed, before we were doing what we were doing. Um, Shortly thereafter, we got a great deal on a new home. We moved into this new home. So that was November. We went through that. We moved in this new home. In January, she's like, you know what? I really miss being creative and working with my hands and building stuff. I'm gonna start doing this. So her first project was actually this big built-in bookshelf that she did in our home we'd bought. So we got her this stuff and she just started documenting it. She's like, I'll put this on Instagram. I'm gonna share this with people just because it's fun. It makes me happy. And I was like, let's go. So she did that. Okay. Starts working on this project, and her following starts to grow. I kid you not, bro. I'm sitting in my office. I had just wrapped up a sales call. I'm writing my notes, doing my stuff. The door flies open. She comes running through the door, beaming. You will never guess what happened. XYZ brand just reached out to me. They want to send me a bunch of products just to talk about. I started crying, dude. That happened, and I just started crying, and I was like, oh, because I'd been holding that prayer that whole time, right? And from that day until now, so that was January of 21. And over the last 3 years, I've watched her. It went from me kind of funding these projects and her doing it to new brands, working with brands, people sending product, people paying her to do it. Last year, last January, I was like, hey, I don't love corporate America. It wasn't for me, and I knew it. And I could
Mm.
see this potential to actually help her dream, right? To help support her in an even higher level in her dream and what she was doing, right? And so I prayed a prayer January of 2023 that by the end of 23 I would be able to step away from my job and go full time helping to build our brand Wild Hearts Home. There's a course we've created to teach other people how to create value and monetize their passions. Um,
Wow.
I kid you not, dude. 2.5 weeks later, guess what happened? I was laid off of my job at Twilio, given 5 months severance, had insurance benefits covering me for the next 6 months, and I was like, "That's it. That's God. That's my prayer that I prayed. Let's go." And dude, from then until now, we've just continued to work on this business, and it's crazy because it just keeps growing and growing and growing. But the most amazing part of this, I don't mean to ramble, but the most amazing part of this is every day I get to see her in her joy, in her creativity, inspiring people. And it's the answer to that prayer that I prayed in our darkest of times that has manifested itself now, and it's continuing to grow and build, and it's just been a really beautiful thing to sit back and witness.
Wow. So, two things come into my mind. Is he like, is she like your DIY project? And I mean that in the most respectful way, right? Like
Mm.
you have this, my goodness, I just want to see this vision for her, right?
Yeah.
How do you get there? Is it like, I mean, how can people find someone like, and feel that way just like you feel about your wife? Is that a thing? Is that even possible?
Yes, it's very possible.
How did you do it?
So, you know, I'd have to rewind a little bit to answer that question.
Hmm.
So, some things that are very, very, very big on my heart, like things that I'm very passionate about, is there's really the two most important questions that you can ask yourself as a human being, in my opinion, are number one, who am I? Number
Mm,
two, what do I want? Who am I
mm,
is not a question that anyone else can answer for you. It's not even an answer that you can come up with here. It's something you must experience who you truly are, right? At the core, behind the identity of dad, son, whatever religion you have, whatever title you have, etc. Who am I, right? Because it's in the answering of that question and the knowledge of that question that allows you to tap into a power that is unstoppable, that
mm,
power of Christ, that power of spirit, that power of divine creation that's within us, right? When you've done that and you know who you are, then you also know who everybody else is. So if I know who I am and I know what I'm capable of and I know what God wants from me, I know God wants that for every single person out there. And so when
mm,
you can do that, then all of a sudden you want everyone else to thrive, right? Because you see yourself in others, you see God in others, and you see that divine spark, and you want to live a life that helps others to see that as well. And so I'm going to get somewhere with this, but that's very important
yeah.
because then what happens is when you can then answer that question of what do I want in a much better way, because I think people kind of know what they want to in a way, but they don't believe they can have it.
Mm,
Or they get caught up with how do I go about getting that? So back to your initial question, right? So with those when you have that knowledge and that understanding, it becomes very easy then to want to help others. And so one of the things that came to me one night in prayer was this concept of when you make other people's dreams your dream, then your dream will spontaneously manifest as a result of that.
All right, my superhuman, why haven't you subscribed? Make sure you click on the link below to subscribe. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Wow.
So,
Wow.
so when I make my wife's dream my dream, and when I get behind that in prayer, when I get behind that in action and intention, you know what happens? Not only does it add to her dream and help that come about, but my dreams also come about as a result of that.
Wow.
And that's what I've witnessed in my life. So I don't know. Hopefully that speaks to the question that you asked. I
Yeah.
know I kind of touched three different
No, I
things, but
like
they're
that.
all interrelated and important.
I like that. So you got to know who you are and why
What you want.
and what you want. So who you are and what you want. And the moment you're able to figure out the who you are and what you want, don't get so sucked into the how is basically what I'm hearing you say. And so would you then say that for most of the guys out there, or even for the girls out there that are looking for to be able to say that about their partner like you have, they probably have not answered those questions the right way, or never taken the time to think about that?
It's tough to say. I've learned I don't under when it comes to it would be easy to say yes. And I think in a way you could say yes, but I don't want to say that because I understand that someone could use that as a way of judging themselves or whatnot. But I think identity is everything. I honestly do. It all stems from that identity, and until you truly know who you are, you can't show up at the highest levels possible. You can't because you're always trying to draw some kind of identity from something outside of yourself, right? And we see this with men. They, you ask them, "Who are you?" The first thing they do is, "Oh, I'm the vice president of XYZ company," or "I have this," or "I have that." And people, they look for outside things to show them who they are, rather than knowing who they are and allowing that to pour into everything that they do.
So, I know you talked about the question of asking who you are, but what are the steps that if you were to look at, you know, fresh college student or fresh college graduate, coming out, is thinking about getting into, he has a girlfriend or is probably looking to get into a relationship, or even a lady who's like, you know what, I think I'm ready to settle down. What are, say, 5 things you would tell them to start looking at to get themselves ready for that journey?
It's a good question. 5 things, huh?
Yeah.
Again, I didn't know any of this stuff when I was younger, getting into a relationship. And I think oftentimes as men, we seek to find our source of identity and fulfillment through a wife or through a woman or through something else. And so again, you've got to do that inner work. I don't mean to be redundant, but really spend time really asking yourself the question, because that's the thing. Think about it, how easily we are distracted in today's day. People don't even have, or they don't take the time to sit for 10 minutes in silence, And I even ask people about their prayer life. What's your life look like? And it's usually, "Father, thank you for this. Thank you for that. Please give me this. Please give me that. Amen." And then they move. Well, did they give any time for God to speak back to them? Did they spend time listening? We'll spend a half an hour or an hour watching a TV show. We'll spend 4 hours watching a football game and watching other people pursue their passions, but we won't spend 4 hours sitting in silence asking the question, "Who am I?" Like, "God, show me who I am. Let me see who I really am," right? So you got to know that, because in order for you to call in the type of partner that can help you live at that highest level, you've got to be there too, right?
Wow.
So I think that's
Nice.
it. But and the reason that's important, because that everything else comes from that integrity. You have to have integrity, right? You have to have the ability to love and love unconditionally. And you know what? Marriage ain't easy. You're going to go through
Mm.
challenges. And if you don't know who you are and you don't know how to love unconditionally, you might end up not making it through those challenges. Communication is important. Understand how to communicate, right? Understand how to be able to speak your feelings in a way and communicate, and understand how to listen, right?
Wow.
And I think the final thing, I think I named four. I think the final thing, as a man, and again, all those things are interrelated, is you've got to get a vision for where you're going and what you want in life. What do
Mm.
you want your marriage to look like? Like, sit down and ask yourself that question. What does my marriage look like? How do I make my wife feel? How do I want to raise my kids? What do I want them to be like? How do I want to show up? And where are we going in this relationship? Like, what does it mean? What are we going to build together? And I think, because that's what women crave. They want to be loved, they want to be heard and felt, but they also want someone that can lead in a good way.
Wow. You really, thank you for that. You really touch on the topic of visualization and having a vision. And so what I'm hearing you say is, even before it happens, way before it happens, you should sit and have a vision of that before you get there.
That's it. That's it. You know, Listen, man, we've talked about this a bit. And those who know me, like, they've heard this a million times. But I had the realization, that we are the authors of our own story, right? And I don't think people realize that enough. And so, if we are the authors of of our story, what kind of story do we want to write? What kind of life do we want to live? And again, when we can visualize, and there's a part of this with God too, right? Because I think we spend so much time asking God, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? And I think there's beauty in that, right? There's a lot of beauty in that. And I spend a lot of time doing that. But what ultimately comes is when I ask that question now and I really sit and listen, do you know what I hear back?
What do you hear back?
What do you want, son?
Hmm.
What do you want?
His words are always yea and amen. Yea and amen. That's it.
What do you
You
want?
you
And
touched on
so,
it. You touched on the topic. So, and I want to make sure we dig deep on that before I lose that thought. You just
yeah,
said we are the authors of our life. And I've heard that so many times, but it never clicked for me that if you are an author, like I just wrote this cybersecurity book, I had to sit and then think about what I want that book to look like. I had to sit and think about the things that I want to put into that book. And then once I started to write it out, more ideas came. But
yeah.
whenever I've heard people say, "Oh, we are authors of our own life," I've never really connected to it as, "Oh, so that is visualization, huh?" Wow, never
Yeah,
connected to it like that.
yeah. Well, kind of an easy. So there's another concept that I like to play with a lot
Okay.
as it relates to this. So now, when I say that we're the author of our own stories, I'm not saying that we are God and whatever. Like I'm not, because I've had people challenge me and be like, "What do you mean? You can't control everything that happens to you?" And that's true. I can't. I cannot control what can happen to me. The only thing I can control is how I'm going to respond to whatever happens to me. But
Absolutely.
what I hold in my mind, so the analogy that I like to use, and for the folks our age and older who went to the movies as kids, you understand how a movie projector works,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
right? So a movie projector, there's a light that shines through, and whatever slide is held in front of the light gets projected onto the screen, and that's what you see in the outer world. That's what you
mm,
see on the screen. So if you think of us as the light, and this is scriptural, the light, right? That's what we are. We are the light. Our minds, the thoughts that we think, the beliefs that we have, etc., are like the slide that comes in front of that light that then gets projected out into our reality.
mm,
So as we think, so we experience and see. And so it's an inner cause and an outer effect. And so understanding that, when you can get clear around what you want and you hold the image, and athletes do this all the time. I know you're an athlete. Athletes
yep.
visualize themselves winning. Michael Jordan visualized himself making every shot, his free throws. You visualize that, and science is now showing that your mind can't tell the difference between what's actually happened or something that you visualize. And so when you go into your prayer life or your meditation life and you hold that vision of what it is that you want and you allow that light to shine through that, what you'll start to notice is your reality will start to match that. And the beautiful part of that is you leave the how and the when up to God. And that's the fun
Mm,
part too.
that's the fun part. Oh my goodness. You just keep on dropping so many jams. So
I don't know if I'm rambling or if I'm giving you what you want, pal, but
no,
you asked the question, I'm going to answer
you keep on dropping so many jams. So what are I know everything comes down to your habits. And you've talked about having a prayer room, you've talked about doing your visualization and your meditation. If you could prescribe anything for anyone, and I'm not saying just prescribe it. This is if you were to say, okay, this is TJ Bain's 1, 2, 3 step non-negotiables for a day as a man. What are the things that you would tell any man to be unapologetically non-negotiable about?
Yeah. You know, I'm going to sound so redundant.
That's okay. That's okay.
It's funny too because there's so many books out there and there's so many different things about success and what does it look like to be a man and this and that. And again, I think I'll, you got to know who you are. You got to spend time doing that, especially in today's day, man. What we're up against on this earth at this time, the battle that we're facing. If you don't know who you are, you're not going to make it, or you're not going to have the impact that you have the potential to have.
Mm.
And number two, again, what do you want? Because you have to get clear on that. And that question, that what do you want question, I didn't mention this earlier, but what's really dope about that question is it exposes a lot of things when you really take the time to sit with it. And I challenge, so all the people my friends, the people I coach, the people I sit with, spend an hour a day, half an hour in the morning and a half an hour at night. Grab a notepad and a notebook if you want to. Ask the question, what do I want? Because what will happen is it will help, as you mentioned, when you're writing a book, it will help you come up with other ideas and really fill in. But there's some questions you ask. What does the highest version of TJ look like? What do I look like physically? How do I speak? What's the impact that I have on others? How do I feel in my heart when I'm around others? What do I look like in my spirit
This is
life?
this is all every day.
Well, until you can start to understand that and get the vision here, until you understand that, you want to ask yourself the question, what does the highest version of Felix look like? When Felix walks in a room, how do people respond? What's the impact that Felix has on people? You know, what's
Hmm.
and so when you start to do that and get clear around that, the next step is to orchestrate your day. So if I know what I want, from the time I wake up in the morning till the time I go to bed, how am I going to utilize my time every day? You know,
Hmm.
because again, we're the authors, right? So you have to take accountability and responsibility for your life. So what I started to do is I started writing things out from the time I woke up till the time I went to bed. What are the things that I did every single day? You know, take my kids to school, be the first face and the last face they see in the morning. Let them know I love them. Go to the gym, exercise, come back, meditate, spend an hour, a half an hour to an hour really honing in on my goals for the day, visualizing the successful outcome. I'm going to put a good meal into my stomach. I'm going to feed my body, right? And then I'm going to go to work. I'm going to go to work accomplishing the tasks that I need to accomplish. All these things are important because as you start to get very clear about your life, that that becomes it because it turns you into an agent rather than someone that's being acted upon. And oftentimes, as men, we get acted upon and we let other people dictate and control how we live our life and what we do day to day. But when you start to take control of that and you start stacking one good decision upon the next, from
Hmm.
what you eat to how you pray to how you move to how you think to what you do to how you surround yourself, and you just start stacking those decisions, what happens is that at first it requires some discipline. Once you've notched that in, it becomes a way of life and you wouldn't do it any other way because how you see what you're capable of and how beautiful life can be when you do those things. Is that speaking to your question? I want to
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
sure
Yeah.
I'm providing clarity there because these are all things we could spend hours talking about. I'm trying to like boil it down and make it simple.
Yeah. I just wanted to know, like, what day to day, um, what a daily routine. If you were to build someone you call, hey, you are this big lion, you got to roar, and to be that version of yourself as a man, the day to day things that you think they should be doing every single day to build that perspective. Because there are guys who listen to this and then they're just like, you know what? I want to be able to build a superhuman mindset. I want to be able to be that guy that walks out into any room and then people turn their heads and ask, who is this guy? Why does he have so much charisma? Why does he have so much impact? What does TJ do to make that happen? Or what would TJ prescribe to make that happen?
Well, I strive to be that kind of person, right? For all the right reasons. I don't know if I'm there yet, right? But that's the goal. What do I do every day? So I make sure I get up with the sun, right? I like to get up. The first thing I do in the morning is I go outside and I watch the sunrise. There's a lot of scientific benefits as to why to do that. I rise with the sun. Next thing I do is the first thing after that is I go down in my prayer room and I spend at least a half an hour in prayer and meditation, connecting inwardly, It's important. It's just so important to spend that time setting my intentions for the day, mapping that out. After I do that, I go and I work out. I like to push myself physically, exercise, get your body moving. As men, we need that. And especially as we start getting older, man, like you've got to take care of your temple. You've got to keep it strong. I make sure I'm eating very, very well. So I fast every day. I eat my first meal around 11, my last meal around 5, and I fast thereafter. So I'm giving my body time to clean itself out, right? When I eat, I'm eating the right kinds of food. The other thing I do that's important is, so I have my day mapped out. I know what I need to accomplish, right? And it's all in alignment with my purpose, right?
Mm.
All the things I'm working on. So in any given day, I might be tiling a floor. We might be running to Home Depot. I might be videoing my wife making content. I might be picking the kids up from school. It doesn't matter. And when I'm doing that, I try to bring my presence there. That's where I'm focused.
Mm.
That's where I'm present in that activity. And then the important part is at the end of the day, right? I go back in my prayer room. I have another half an hour where I'm down there in meditation. What I'm doing again, I start in prayer, giving gratitude for my life. That is the most important thing you can do, is to have gratitude, period. Gratitude, right? You give gratitude for your life, and then you start to revisit your day, how it went, where are the areas I could have been better, right? Like, we want to celebrate our success, but we also want to be mindful of the ways in which we may have not shown up at our highest level. And then
Highest level.
I start to visualize out what I have tomorrow. So my next day, I see myself, how am I going to be the following day? And I love to do that at the end of my day, because I do that before bedtime, and then I've already decompressed from the day. I'm able to fall asleep, sleep well, rinse and repeat.
What would you tell 15-year-old TJ, knowing everything you know right now?
I think I would tell him, you're going to be okay, pal. You're going to be just fine. Because I spent a lot of time worrying in those days, like, am I going to be a good dad? Am I going to make it? It sounds crazy to say, but like at that age, you don't know what the future has. So I tell myself, you're going to be just fine, big guy. And life's not going to go as you think it will, but it will be better than you could have ever expected.
Anything you tell him to do?
I would tell him, you got to be able to answer the question of who you are and what you want. Get working on it now.
Mm.
Again, I sound like a broken record, but I've seen the power of these questions over and over again. And, I've read so many books. I've attended seminars. I've done a lot of things. I've studied a lot of stuff. And those two questions right there have been probably the most powerful things in terms of transforming my life and building the type of life for me and my family and my loved ones. It's important.
Wow, man, this has been very profound. I really, really, really appreciate it. What do you want to tell the people listening to you? Where can they find you? What new projects do you have coming up? Anything you want to share with anyone?
This ain't about me. I kind of want to turn the script on you. So can I share something with you? Um,
Yeah, of course.
and I want to be respectful of time. I do.
No, no, you're fine. You're fine.
But I think it's important to share with this, and for the people that listen to you, who obviously already know what an absolute king you are, dude. You are such a powerful, love filled, just vibrant being. Moving is not easy, especially when you're an adult. In Utah, that's where I was born and raised. And I have a massive group of brothers out there that have been cultivating for years.
Mm.
That we'd have these conversations with brothers that had walked with me through my darkest days, whom I've walked with and held through their darkest days. And moving away was not easy, dude. Coming into a brand new place, you know all about this. And so about
Yep.
6 months ago, I went through this whole mourning process. It sounds funny, dude. As an adult, I went through this grieving process of, even though I didn't lose my friends, I could still call them, but not being in their physical presence was hard for me, dude. So hard.
Exactly.
And I finally allowed myself, I accepted the fact that, okay, look, you're going to have to start finding your brothers here. And it doesn't mean that you don't have
Mm,
brothers there. It just means you start to build surround yourself with a group of a tribe out here, right? And so that was my prayer. I started that. That was my new prayer and my new visualization, was visualizing myself surrounded by this group of kings, of lions, of men who were heading in the same direction, right?
mm.
And dude, who would have thought? I'm just working out one day at the gym, and you just, I can't even remember how the whole conversation started, but it was almost like an immediate thing. Like, I looked in your eyes and you asked me
Yep.
a couple questions, and I was like, okay, this is this. There's something here, you know. And then we went to lunch that first time, and I was like,
Yep.
immediately, I was like, whoa. So, dude, you've been an answer to the prayer that I've been holding.
Thank you for everyone listening. Yeah, to all my guests. I walk in the gym and I see this jacked guy with this beautiful tattoo of a lion's face right there, just hitting the weight. And I'm just like, I want to be friends with that guy. Let me go ask him what he's doing because I want to be like him when I grow up. And here we are. Oh, man. So thank you, TJ. This has been amazing. My man, you have so much to share with the world. I think when it comes to you, we're probably going to have to even do three variations of this because there's so many facets of you the world needs to know. We didn't even get a chance to talk about the crypto options, like all of the cool things that you are doing. But I think this piece that we're able to touch on here today is super duper important because if we don't know who we are, and we don't know what we want, we will never be able to touch all the things that we're talking about. And I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. I know you're running multiple things and still have a family to take care of. I even know you have family at home right now, and you decided to take this time with us and then share your experiences with us. Really appreciate you, brother. I love you, man. And I can't wait to talk some more with you. I
I
appreciate
love
you.
you too, my man. Thank you so much. It was an honor. And I look forward to further conversations, man. It was so fun. But you know what? I'm going to be asking you more questions next time. I did way too much talking today.
I'm always ready. I'm ready for you.
All right.